this car was originally owned by Her Majesty's government. Every car has a story. This old Peugeot 205 is no exception. The history of this car is absolutely incredible. I can't believe what I found. The guy who has clearly known the car since new has just emailed me back. But now, after 2 years of owning this car, it's time to sell. All right, we'll call that a deal then. Cheers. I just sold the 205. Just had an email. The guy who's known the car since new, who we've been in touch with, also wants to buy the car. Closer look at the paperwork of this car. Transport manager, GSS garages, 61 to 63 Great Suffolk Street. Bill here for a breakdown, 1989. That's probably not far off the car being new. Stanford Close off Fernley Crescent. The bill receipt is made out to HM Customs and Excise General Services Division. More bills for HM Customs and Excise. Reverse gear problem. HM Customs and Excise again. Another breakdown. Throttle cable unserviceable. Another breakdown. M11 cut out non-start. On arrival, no trace of vehicle. We probably got it going. And so clearly this car was originally owned by Her Majesty's, as it was back then, government. So it's like a spy car then, and what we found out next was even more incredible. So there's an invoice here for ADT auctions. They were what is now British Car Auctions, I think, back in the day. The date is April 1992. It's sold, there's the name of the guy, for the princely sum of £2,572. I'm just going to give the name of the guy here. It's quite a unique name. A quick Google. There is a director on Companies House that shares exactly the same name, and it's a fairly unusual name of the person that's on this V5 that I'm seeing that's dated from 1992. But there is an address. I'm going to write him a letter and see what he comes back with.
Many months later.
The guy who has clearly known the car since new has just emailed me back with a rather incredible email. Right, listen to this. This is incredible. I'm reading verbatim. Your car does have an exciting background. It was one of a small number of 205s bought by the investigation division of HM Customs and Excise. Most of the work, Customs and Excise, took place at airports and ports. However, for serious cases, smuggling and fraud, mostly drugs and VAT fraud, the department had approximately 2,000 plainclothes specialist investigators based in London. In addition to the specialist investigators, there were a number of support staff, and I was one of those, having joined the investigation division ID in the 80s. In the 90s, I was transferred to the ID's main garage at Great Suffolk Street. That's where all the bills were from, now demolished. My job was to help computerize the ID's car records, so I came into contact with the cars on a daily basis. Cool job. Each year, the ID bought about 300 new cars. Cars were swapped out at 3 years or 60,000 miles, whichever came first. Departmental cars were used for transport of offices, but all were adapted for covert surveillance work. This is incredible. This usually involved installing a radio fit to a car for a Raycal radio system called the Cougar Net system. This is like proper James Bond stuff. These were encrypted radios and could be used in vehicles, and individual staff called footmen used a slimmed down version. That's so cool. The designation given to this car was Car 76. Departmental Car 76, or DC 76 for short. There were smaller cars such as 205s or the Ford Fiesta. These might be team runarounds or reserved for a team leader. Cool. DC 76, that's this 205, was used by one of the proceeds of crimes teams, and they were sold off. Once a month, a couple of car transporters turned up Took the cars away for disposal. DC-76, can you imagine? Eventually was brought in for disposal. It seemed in good condition. It had MOT tax and not too many dents. I had a few drives in it and I wanted it, so he did. So then from the history, I googled him on the directors, he's a civil servant, so he obviously worked for the government in Company's House. This all makes sense. Being a pal of mine, the garage transport officer found out when the car was to be auctioned. I went down with another friend to bid on it. Auctions are always exciting, and when DC-76 came up there was some interest. Can you imagine? But I was able to buy it. I sorted out insurance using one of those newfangled mobile phones and took it back to London. The mechanic at the garage did a service on it, and a few bits that needed replacing, such as the rear parcel shelf, there you go, were swapped out for bits in better condition. I kept the car at Suffolk Street for a while. I used it for transport to and from work. I had a local Peugeot garage close to me. When I felt the car was overheating, another issue, I took it in expecting the radiator need changing. I was surprised when the garage rang me later to say that the radiator cooling system was alright, but the car's rear suspension was in a state and unsafe to drive. Wow. I couldn't help but think of the previous evening when I'd been three-wheeling it round a big roundabout on the Elephant Castle. Brilliant. This car's living its life. There'd been no hint of suspension trouble then. Much against the garage's advice, I took the car back. Next time I was doing a long journey, the radiator did fail, so I had to get it replaced. They told me there was no sign of anything wrong with the rear suspension. Never trusted agent garages since then. So Peugeot let him down a bit then. At some point, the car went back to where he lives now. I had a dent knocked out the front wings and the car looked very smart. I had a three-way switch fitted in the left boot shelf support, which isolates the fuel pump. One position is on, the other two isolate the fuel pump. Had some stainless steel brake hoses fitted and some uprated brake pads. Now I think the stainless steel hoses are still on. Now it was stopped very quickly indeed. Thought my contact lenses were going to pop out. The car had no sunroof, which is how they should have been left, arguably. Had no sunroof, so I had one fitted to let a bit of fresh air in. I've got a receipt for that. I can see, seen the receipt for that. It's a Peugeot dealer fit sunroof pop out. Managed to get flashed by a speed camera, yes, going a little over the limit. Had a breakdown when the accelerator linkage came adrift, easily fixed. I was a member of the Peugeot Owners Club. I went to one of their meetings at Silverstone and was able to drive on the shorter circuit in the car. It's been around Silverstone. Lots of young guys going into the gravel traps, but I made it around okay. It was a good place to put spares and bits like the wraparound plastic light guards I had fitted to the front. Wraparound, I don't think they're on anymore. My mum used to hate the 205, not grand enough for her, plus the passenger seat used to collapse a centimetre or so after a couple of minutes, which she always hated. Doesn't do that now. Although I was still working in London, I left the car where I am from. Finally I had to sell it as I couldn't afford this insurance, tax and running costs. Oh, that's a shame. To my lasting regret, I asked a friend of mine to dispose of the car. I felt heartbroken when they took it away. Don't know what happened to the car after that. I could see online that someone somewhere owned it but didn't know who. Wow, there you go. What a brilliant message. History. What the heck happened when we came to sell it? Well, I listed it on all the usual places that you can list a car for free, like this. Car and Classic, Piston Heads, Facebook, eBay. I got a phone call from someone who seemed very interested. Nice guy. Yes mate, yes mate. Yeah. From the north. And if you're watching this now, I can't apologise enough. Made a deal with me over the phone. Alright, we'll call that a deal then. Cheers. And even paid me a deposit. He was happy, deposit was paid. Flips that on its head a little bit. The guy who we'd been in touch with came back to me over email. The guy who's known the car since new also wants to buy the car. He'd known the car for 13 years. For the first 13 years of its life, he'd known this car. He wanted to buy the car for the full asking price. There was no deal to be made, full asking price. So I had a dilemma on my hands. I had one buyer on one side who'd paid me a deposit, done a deal, wasn't quite full asking price. not about to keep it in a garage, and there was just something that felt a little bit off. And then I had the guy that's known the car since really brand new, the first 3 years of its life, bought it at auction and kept it for 10 years. Also, he's of an age now where he's not very well, and he just wanted to get the car and offering me full asking price. Now, you tell me right in the comments, with that dilemma, what would you do? This is where the story takes another twist. I went back to the guy that had owned it and known about it since new and said, sure, you've got to have it. You heard the email that he wrote back. He knew everything about it, and he loved and costed this car for 10 years and only got rid of it because he couldn't afford the insurance back in 2002. Did not mess around and paid me instantly. Put the money in my account. That then left me with the dilemma of the other guy who had very kindly paid me a deposit. I sold this car twice. I went back to him with a very polite message telling him the story, the fact that the guy that had known this car since new wanted to buy it. He was not happy. Understandably not happy. I get it. But he was really not happy. I offered him his full deposit back plus another £100 because I felt so terrible. He wasn't potentially going to be too much out of pocket. Yes, it was an inconvenience, I get that. Probably logistics had been arranged, etc. But I thought as a gesture of goodwill, I would offer him another £100 back on his deposit. Again, he kind of came back, he wasn't happy. I just asked for his bank details, apologised again profusely, trying to make it right with him. Eventually sent him his deposit plus the extra £100 back. This is where the story takes another twist. A day or two goes by. Bear in mind I have full money for this car at this point in my account. Car's still in the garage. Full money in my account. The gentleman who's known his car since new then got back to me and phoned me up, and he had been to the doctors, but he had a pretty rotten to diagnose. And when I say rotten, I mean rotten. Not great news. I had one buyer on one hand who'd paid me a deposit, who I told couldn't have the car now because I had received the full amount for the car. And then I had my guy that had known the car since new asking very nicely if he could have his money back now because he doesn't know how long he had left. Wow. So I went from having two buyers to having no buyers, and it's just one of those things. And one of the slightly meditative approaches that I have to life now is the only thing you can control is how you react to situations. So I try to react to this situation as coolly and as calmly as I could. There's nothing that can be done about it. It is literally just one of those things. So of course I gave him all of his money back, and the car remained unsold. Sold it twice, and then both sales fell through. It's such sod's law. That was a couple of weeks ago. The car's continued to be advertised, and a very nice man came this week, looked at the car. I went out for a drive in it with him. I drove it, he drove it. He seems very happy. He's a proper enthusiast. He's going to look after the car. I can tell. He's going to keep it in the garage. I'm going to ask him if he'll give me first refusal on this car when and if he ever sells it in the future. So hopefully it's a good news story all around. Wrap this video up there. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Write in the comments, tell me what you think. We'll see you again on the next video very soon. Thanks for watching. Cheers.
Later.